They blew my damn front door off its hinges at 6 in the morning, boom. No warning, no knock, just a flash of light and splinters flying past my coffee mug as I hit the floor in my own living room. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Oak Ridge, where the biggest crime used to be someone's dog pooping on the wrong lawn. But that morning, it felt like a war zone, and the people behind it, the HOA, yeah, you read that right. Our Homeowner Association somehow decided they had the authority to play police. They've always been drunk on power, but this time they went full psycho. Leading the charge was the queen of all Karens, Miss Beverly Klein, 50-something, platinum hair sprayed stiff as a helmet, armed with a clipboard and a delusional sense of authority. She heads our HOA like it's the FBI. Always snooping, always threatening fines for things like non-regulation mailbox paint and unauthorized garden gnomes. But this time, she crossed a line. See, a few weeks ago I had my son Shane move back in with me. Navy SEAL just wrapped up a deployment and needed some downtime. Quiet guy built like a tank. Keeps to himself, runs at sunrise, stacks his boots by the door. Beverly had no idea he was here. He stayed off her radar. Until now, I scrambled behind the couch, heart pounding, and heard boots storming in. Not cops, not SWAT. Just a bunch of HOA board members in tactical vests they probably ordered online. Fake badges dangling from their necks like it meant something. One of them yelled, "Clear," like they were in a movie, and then, "I suggest you step back." It was Shane. Calm, cold, standing at the top of the stairs with nothing but shorts, a t-shirt, and a whole lot of presents. He had one hand resting casually on the rail. The other, holding his military ID. The whole room froze. "You just broke into a private residence," Shane said, walking down the stairs slowly. "Who's in charge?" Beverly stepped forward like she was about to scold a teenager. "This property is in violation of HOA Code 4B19. You've installed an unauthorized security camera, and we have reason to believe you're harboring a non-registered tenant. You blew up my front door over a camera," I shouted, getting off the floor. "Are you insane? You ignored 3 warnings," Beverly snapped. "We sent letters." "This is an enforcement action." Shane tilted his head. "You're not law enforcement, you're trespassing, and you just committed property destruction." "That's a felony." One of her lackeys, some guy in cargo pants and sunglasses, stammered. "We were authorized under the bylaws to enforce." "No, you're not," Shane said. "But let's let the actual cops sort this out." "Yeah." He walked over, picked up the landline because I still keep one, and called the sheriff. Calm as ever. Beverly tried to stop him, tried to snatch the phone right out of his hand. Big mistake. Shane stepped sideways and she ended up tripping over a boot and landing flat on her back. "That's assault," Shane said, looking down at her. "On both ends." I stood there, still trying to process what happened. My front door was gone. My son just neutralized a fake HOA raid. And Beverly Klein was on the floor, red-faced and screaming about bylaws like they were the Constitution. And I knew right then I wasn't letting this slide. Deputies arrived in under 15 minutes, 2 cruisers, lights spinning low and silent, pulling up behind the HOA's little convoy of subs. Shane had already stepped outside, shirtless now, arms folded across his chest, watching Beverly pace in tight circles on our lawn like she was rehearsing a courtroom speech. The rest of her board cronies stood awkwardly by the hedges, checking their phones and pretending they hadn't just participated in a felony. Deputy Ramos was the one I knew. Seen him around town events. Friendly, but no nonsense. He stepped out of his cruiser, took one look at my doorless entryway, and let out a long breath. "Who called this in?" he asked, glancing around. Shane raised a hand. "I did. Forced entry, destruction of property. Possible impersonation of law enforcement." Ramos looked from Shane to Beverly, who was already marching toward him. "They're exaggerating," she barked. "We're the Oak Ridge HOA. We had full authority to act. The homeowner was in violation of multiple covenant codes and ignored formal notifications. We executed an enforcement action." Ramos didn't blink. He turned to look at the door or what was left of it. "Lady, that's not enforcement. That's a battering ram. You got a warrant. Our bylaws permit us to. I didn't ask about bylaws. I asked if you had a legal warrant signed by a judge to break into someone's house." She hesitated. "We had probable cause." Ramos raised an eyebrow. "You're not law enforcement. You don't get to use that phrase." Another deputy, a woman named Keeley, was already walking around taking photos of the door, the front step, and the splinters scattered across the floor inside. I finally stepped forward, rage simmering past the adrenaline. "You see this? This isn't some HOA dispute. They brought tools. They came in like a raid team. I want every one of them charged." Beverly folded her arms. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "No," Shane said, stepping closer. "You're about to find out what proportion looks like when you break federal law." Ramos ran a hand down his face. "Okay, everyone not a homeowner or a resident step off the property. Now, we're detaining you for questioning. You can explain yourselves at the station." The HOA board started murmuring, trying to ease their way toward their vehicles, but Keeley stepped in front of them. "Nope. Stay right where you are." One of the board members, a guy in his late 40s with a goatee and a trembling voice, tried to protest. "We were told we had immunity under municipal policy." Ramos looked at him like he'd just declared himself a unicorn. "What policy?" "Who told you that?" Beverly said. "I said we were within our rights," she snapped. "The HOA has enforcement privileges as outlined in the Oak Ridge Charter." "Ma'am," Keeley said, "unless that charter was signed by a judge and backed by a law enforcement agency, you're looking at charges that include unlawful entry, impersonation, and criminal mischief. At minimum." 5 minutes later, they were all in zip ties. Not handcuffs. Ramos was trying to play it calm, but nobody missed the fact that they were being loaded into squad cars like common criminals. The neighbors started gathering on their lawns, whispering, filming with their phones. A few even clapped. Inside, I sat on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders, more out of shock than cold. Shane was standing by the kitchen window, arms crossed, watching the deputies work. "They're gonna try to spin this," I said. "Say we attacked them. Say we were hiding something," he nodded. "That's why I recorded everything." I blinked. "You what?" "Doorbell cam. Plus I had a body cam running upstairs. I've been documenting ever since I noticed someone following me from the community gym a few nights ago." I stared at him. "You think they were targeting you, not just me? Anyone they can't intimidate. I found signs someone had been tampering with your mail. Letters missing, HOA notices left half open. I didn't say anything because I wanted to be sure." My stomach turned. "They've been watching us." Shane pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. "More than that. I checked the HOA's public filings last week. There's a new clause in their budget security enforcement initiatives. They've been funneling money into a private security firm." "Guess who owns it?" I didn't answer. "Beverly's nephew, LLC, out of state, no licenses in the county, just a P.O. box and a website." I leaned forward. "So this was a grift. A big one, fake fines, forced citations, threats of liens. Then they offer to waive the penalties if homeowners agree to upgrade their properties through board-approved vendors, all connected to her family. It's racketeering." Ramos came back inside 30 minutes later, face grim. "Just got off the phone with the DA's office. They're moving fast on this one. We're talking multiple charges across the board. You'll be contacted for statements." I nodded. "They gonna try to retaliate?" "They can try," he said, "but they're in deep now, and your son here. He just gave us more evidence than we've ever had on these people." Shane handed him a flash drive. "Every meeting they held off the books, audio and video. They talked openly about coercing residents into compliance." Ramos took the drive carefully like it was gold. "You just made a lot of people very nervous, and probably saved this neighborhood from a collapse." After he left, I stepped outside. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the lawns. Neighbors were still out, whispering in small groups, pointing at the empty HOA trucks now being towed. A few came over cautiously, asking what happened. I kept it simple. They went too far, now they're paying for it. By late afternoon, news crews had shown up. Someone had tipped them off, probably a deputy. I didn't care. Let the whole town see what happens when you weaponize a neighborhood association. One woman from Channel 6 asked if I wanted to comment. I said no. But Shane stepped up beside me and said, "You can tell people this, there's nothing wrong with having standards. But when people start using rules to control others, that's not community, that's tyranny." The camera guy nodded like he'd just heard Shakespeare. That night, I didn't sleep much. The front door was still a gaping hole. We'd covered it with plywood and a few nails. Shane stayed up most of the night watching the street quietly from the back patio, just in case someone decided to get stupid. But they didn't. Instead, neighbors came by, some brought coffee, others offered tools. One guy I barely knew, Jerry from 2 blocks over, showed up with a full replacement door and offered to help install it. "We've been dealing with them too," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "They tried to fine me for parking my truck in my own driveway. Said it wasn't aesthetic, screw that." By sunrise, the door was in place, stronger than before, metal core, reinforced frame. I stood there looking at it, thinking how something so simple had kicked off the unraveling of an entire corrupt system. And Shane, he was already 2 steps ahead. He'd started drafting a petition, not just for a recall of the HOA board, but for a full audit of their finances, vendor contracts, and backdoor deals. "We're not done yet," he said. "They messed with the wrong house." And for the first time since this whole madness began, I believed him. The morning after the door replacement, there was a knock, an actual gentle knock on the new steel frame. I opened it cautiously, still half expecting another lunatic in a vest. But instead, it was a tall man in a charcoal gray suit with a leather briefcase and a county badge clipped to his belt. "Mr. Creighton?" he asked, glancing past me. I nodded. "Yeah, and you're with?" "Special Investigator Lucas Merritt, County Inspector General's office." "Mind if I come in?" He stepped inside without waiting for a full invitation, scanning the living room like he already knew what he was looking for. He paused near the entryway, eyes lingering on the plywood stacked beside the couch. "I've reviewed the footage your son submitted," he said. "And the financial documents forwarded by Deputy Ramos. We've opened an active investigation into the Oak Ridge HOA. I need to go over a few things with you in person." I motioned toward the kitchen table. Shane was already seated, flipping through a small leather notebook filled with handwritten notes and printed emails. Merritt sat down and opened his briefcase, laying out a set of property maps, a list of names, and a digital recorder. "I'm going to ask questions that may sound unrelated," he said, "but I need precise answers. This goes beyond door damage." Shane leaned forward. "We figured that." Merritt looked at me. "Have you ever signed a proxy authorization form for HOA voting?" I shook my head. "Never." He flipped a page. "According to HOA records, someone submitted one in your name last February. It gave Beverly Klein full power to vote on your behalf for fiscal and legal decisions." "That's a forgery," I said. "I've never signed anything like that. We've got 15 similar cases so far, all residents over 50, all claimed they never signed. But the board used those proxies to approve a security expansion budget of over $200,000. Funds were routed to 3 companies. All of them trace back to the Klein family." Shane exhaled slowly. "That explains the fake enforcement team. They weren't just flexing, they were covering fraud." Merritt nodded. "We suspect they used intimidation tactics to prevent homeowners from attending meetings. Then filled the gaps with forged proxies. Once they had quorum, they passed whatever they wanted." I looked at the maps. "What's this?" "Unrecorded modifications to property boundaries," Merritt said. "The HOA filed false easement extensions with the county. They claimed authority to control access to parts of residents' yards and driveways. They've been using those forged documents to issue fines and threaten legal action, basically extorting people." Shane tapped one of the highlighted properties. That's the Petersons. They had their garden torn out last month. Exactly, Merritt said. The board claimed it was encroaching on common space, but the original plat map says otherwise. I stood up, pacing. So they faked votes, stole money, and rewrote property maps. And no one noticed. They did, Merritt replied. But the people who pushed back were hit with escalating fines until they either sold or gave up. Most assumed it was just bad luck. Others moved out. Shane said nothing for a moment. Then, how far does this go? Merritt flipped to the last page in his folder. There's a shell company in Nevada that owns a controlling interest in 3 of the HOA's approved vendors. We believe Beverly's son used it to launder funds from the HOA's reserve account. We're talking hundreds of thousands, possibly more. I felt like the room tilted slightly. So what now? We've already obtained search warrants for the HOA office and Beverly's residence. We're coordinating with state financial crimes and the FBI, but we're going to need more than just documents. We need resident testimony, on record. If you're willing, Shane looked at me. I nodded without hesitation. I'll say whatever you need, I said. Merritt stood. Good, we'll be in contact soon, and Mr. Creighton, don't tell anyone I was here. We don't want them spooking. After he left, Shane stood silently by the window, arms folded, watching a car slowly roll past the house. A beige sedan, no plates on the front. You recognize it? I asked. Seen it twice this morning, he said. Same guy behind the wheel, dark hair. Aviators? I grabbed my phone. You think they're watching us? I don't think. I know. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a small black box, an RF scanner. He turned it on and walked the perimeter of the kitchen. The needle spiked near the thermostat. Hidden mic, he muttered. Cheap one, wired in. I stared at the wall. They bugged the house. Shane unscrewed the thermostat cover, revealing a tiny disc wired into the battery terminal. He popped it out and crushed it with a pair of pliers. We're not dealing with amateurs anymore, he said. They're panicking. By noon, we had swept the house, found 2 more devices, one behind the bookshelf and another tucked under the hallway light switch. All cheap, all clearly installed by someone in a hurry. Shane installed new locks, reinforced the back door, and set up a temporary jammer near the router. Then he opened his laptop and started building a firewall tighter than Fort Knox. At 3 o'clock, I got a text from Jerry, the guy who helped with the door. He said 2 people from the HOA were knocking on doors, asking residents to sign a community unity petition. Shane told him to stall them. We watched from the upstairs window as Beverly's niece, a woman dressed like she was headed to brunch, went house to house with a clipboard. Another man followed, bald, heavyset, wearing an HOA badge that looked freshly printed. Shane grabbed the camera. Let's catch them in the act, he said. We walked outside casually. Beverly's niece turned around, fake smile already locked in. Hi there, just doing a little outreach. We're hoping to put this whole misunderstanding behind us and bring the community together. Would you like to sign the petition? What's it for? I asked. Oh, just a pledge of support for the board, she said. To show unity and prevent further legal drama. Shane tilted his head. So it's a loyalty pledge. No, just a positive statement from residents. It's non-binding. He reached for the clipboard. Mind if I take a look? She hesitated. Actually, these are confidential. Shane took a photo of the top page before she could react. The header read, Affirmation of board authority and indemnity from legal action. Non-binding, he said. The man beside her stepped forward. We're within our rights to seek community support. Shane turned to me. You recognize this guy? I squinted. That's the same guy who was in the fake raid. He had the crowbar. The man froze. You can't prove that. You're on video, Shane said evenly. Multiple angles. The woman grabbed the clipboard and turned sharply. We're done here. Shane didn't move. You step on our property again, I'll have you trespassed. And if you harass one more neighbor, you'll be dealing with a restraining order. They backed off, walking briskly down the sidewalk. Shane turned to me. They're trying to rewrite the narrative, he said. Make it look like we're the problem, I nodded. Then we make sure they can't. That night, we set up a neighborhood meeting, not at the community center, the board still had keys to that. We used the old firehouse on Maple, rented for the evening with help from a friend of Shane's in the planning department. 32 residents showed up. Some had never seen each other outside of trash day. Others brought files, old letters, strange charges, notices they never understood. One man, Mr. Alden, revealed he'd been fined for having a non-compliant back fence. He had replaced it with one approved by the board, who then cited him again for using the wrong screws. Shane stood at the front, calm and direct. "We're building a formal case," he said. "We're working with the county and the feds. If you've been harassed, fined unfairly, or pressured into contracts, we need your story. We protect each other now." People lined up to speak, some with tears, others with fury. One woman, a single mother, said the HOA threatened to place a lien on her house over a missing porch light bulb. Another man said his teenage son was threatened with a citation for skateboarding on his own driveway. By the time the meeting ended, we had over 24 affidavits. The house was quiet when we returned, but Shane's phone buzzed just before midnight. He picked it up, listened for a moment, then hung up. "That was Merritt," he said. "They raided the HOA office tonight, found shredded documents, 2 hard drives, and a burner laptop. But they also found something else." I looked up. "What?" "A ledger. Hidden in a wall panel, it lists every resident, their property value, and a column labeled pressure points." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "They've been profiling us," I whispered. Shane nodded. "And now it's our turn to expose every piece of it." By the following morning, the entire county was buzzing. The hidden ledger had gone straight into the hands of a federal financial crimes task force, and the investigators weren't wasting time. Agents in clean-cut suits and reflective sunglasses were seen entering the county assessor's office by noon. That same hour, I got a call from investigator Merritt. "They've subpoenaed the HOA's bank accounts," he said, voice clipped, like he hadn't slept. "Everything's unraveling faster than we expected. But we need to contain the damage." In less than 48 hours, they'd found off-book payments routed through 4 separate accounts, bounced between states, and disguised as infrastructure reimbursements. One of the transfers had gone to a Florida holding company that, according to Merritt, didn't even technically exist. "They weren't just shaking down homeowners," he told Shane and me back in our kitchen later that day. "They were laundering money through the neighborhood itself, and the pressure point column, they used it to identify who wouldn't fight back." Shane's jaw tightened. "What about the ones that did?" Merritt dropped a file on the table. 2 homes were scheduled for foreclosure next month. Both owners were fighting citations in court. Beverly and her board had already signed contracts to sell the properties to a shell buyer at below market value. I opened the file. "So they were stealing houses." "Legally, barely," Merritt said, "but under coercion, it's fraud. And now, with the ledger and the proxy forgery, we've got enough to freeze assets." Shane stood up. "Then do it. Cut their legs out." That afternoon, the HOA's accounts were frozen by court order. All payments, transfers, and fines were halted indefinitely. A notice was sent to every resident through certified mail, not email, not the HOA's app, but actual paper, something no one could intercept or delete. That's when things got dicey. At dusk, a white van appeared outside the HOA office. No markings, no plates. 2 men entered through the back door, pried open. Security footage from the hardware store across the street showed them loading boxes into the van and driving off without headlights. Merritt called me that night. "They're destroying evidence," he said. "We've already issued warrants, but they're trying to stay one step ahead. We need eyes on the street." Shane wasted no time. By morning, he'd organized a network of residents, each with a walkie-talkie and a basic patrol schedule. Not a vigilante group, nothing public. Just neighbors watching intersections, taking down license plates and keeping cameras rolling. Everything was handed directly to investigators. Meanwhile, the board members were vanishing. 3 skipped town. One tried to fly to Arizona and got pulled at the gate by federal agents. The others started lawyering up, but it didn't help much. The evidence was stacked too high, and the agencies involved weren't giving them time to squirm. We learned something else then, something that made the entire room go silent. Merritt arrived late one evening, his tie loose, shirt wrinkled, and eyes bloodshot. "We searched one of the board members' storage units," he said. "Found a filing cabinet full of complaint forms from residents, hundreds." "And?" I asked. "Every one of them marked with a red X or green circle. The red ones were residents who fought back. The green ones were flagged as pliable." Shane's voice dropped. "They were profiling who to target. Worse. They were using those files to decide who to fine, who to threaten with liens, and who to offer discounted upgrades to. The real kicker. The forms were never entered into any HOA system. They were keeping them separate." I gripped the edge of the counter. "How many of those people lost their homes?" "At least 8, Merritt said. "We've got a restitution team working on it now. The county's setting up a victim fund for those affected." That night, Shane and I sat on the front porch with a thermos of coffee between us. His eyes scanned the street like they always did, methodical and unblinking. "You think it's over?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "They've still got friends in the shadows, people who benefited. They'll try to protect themselves." He wasn't wrong. 2 days later, a city council member was arrested in connection with the scheme. He'd been approving zoning permissions in exchange for kickbacks from the vendors tied to Beverly's nephew. More dominoes fell: county clerks, a property assessor, even a real estate agent who'd helped flip the stolen homes. The court hearings started a week later. Shane and I attended the first one, sitting in the back row of the gallery. Beverly was led in wearing a navy blue suit 2 sizes too big and an expression that had lost all its false confidence. She didn't look left or right. Just stared straight ahead while the judge read out the charges. Wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy to defraud, criminal impersonation, and unlawful property seizure. When the judge asked for her plea, her voice was barely audible. "Not guilty." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed federal attorney, responded immediately by entering 32 exhibits into the record: documents, videos, audio recordings, including the footage from our door camera the moment my son stepped in front of a rogue HOA raiding party and told them with quiet certainty that they were finished. The judge didn't delay. Trial was set for 30 days out. No bail. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Local reporters, residents, even people from other neighborhoods who'd heard what happened. One man approached me, older, holding a worn baseball cap in his hands. "You're the guy whose kid stood up to him, right?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "I just wanted to say thanks," he said. "They tried to do the same to my brother's place last year, nearly drove him into bankruptcy. We thought we were alone." I shook his hand. "You're not anymore." Over the next 2 weeks, things changed. The HOA was dissolved by emergency vote overseen by the county. A temporary community council was formed. Volunteers. No salaries, no fines, no enforcers. Just neighbors who wanted to help fix what had been broken. Shane helped launch a public resource center in the old firehouse. Free legal advice, property rights workshops, and a hotline for reporting HOA abuse in nearby communities. The first week, they got over 100 calls. Merritt stopped by on the last day of the month. He looked better: clean shave, rested face, new tie. "We've issued indictments for everyone involved," he said. 23 people across 4 counties. Every one of them's going to trial." Shane nodded. "And the restitution fund, fully funded, county matched it. First payments go out next week." I stood quietly for a moment, then asked, "How do we make sure this never happens again?" Merritt looked out at the street, where kids were riding bikes and 2 men were replanting a flower bed someone had once been fined for. "Transparency," he said. "Sunlight. You don't let people like that operate in shadows. You drag everything into the open and you don't stop watching." That night the house was calm, no watchers, no strange cars, no knock at dawn. Just the creak of the porch swing, the sound of wind chimes, and the quiet hum of a neighborhood finally breathing again. Shane stood up, stretched his back, and looked out at the street. "They thought they could turn a community into a racket," he said. I nodded. "And they didn't expect someone to fight back." His eyes settled on the new front door, strong, reinforced, a reminder. "They definitely didn't expect me," he said, and he sat back down, calm as ever.